Hello everybody, I'm Scotty. Welcome back to Scotties Clock World. In today's video we're going to learn how to remove a mainspring from a mainspring barrel manually. First thing we have to do is remove the barrel cap from the barrel. To do that we use a small hammer and hit the top here 2 or 3 times, and that's sufficient to remove the cap. Look at all the oil on that. Wow, people just love oil, over oiling things as if it's a means of getting a clock to work again. Look at that. Wow, fair enough. Right, now having taken the cap off, we're now going to remove the spring out of the barrel. We'll use a multi-key on top of the winding arbor, wind it backwards to remove this piece here out of the spring. I'll hit that with a hammer a couple of times. See if we can drop it out. And there we go, that's removed it. Once again, look at the oil on that. Alright, we'll put them aside. Give them a quick wipe, get rid of some of the oil off that. And now we'll start to remove the spring from the barrel. We'll get a pair of pointy nose pliers on it and start pulling it out just a tiny little bit and slowly unwinding it at the same time. Getting a good grip with our gloved hand. You can see that the spring is starting to come out. Now I'll put my other glove on while keeping a tight hold on the spring. We don't want it to jump back in again. Now we slowly unwind the spring and pull it out of the barrel. Pretty tight, this one. I'll get another grip on that with the pliers. Slowly, there we go, we've started him. That's what I was waiting for. Now the spring will just slide round in our hand as it unwinds out of the barrel. And there's our spring. That looks alright. Very oily, but at least it's out of the barrel, which is also thick with oil. Now we'll clean the spring and grease it and put it aside till we need it later on. What you have to be careful of when you're pulling the spring out is not to drag it out too far at a time. Just unwind it slowly with a nice tight grip on it, because when the spring comes out it has to be flat like that. If you pull too tightly, the spring is going to end up looking like that. That's called pyramiding, and that totally destroys the integrity of the spring and it has to be replaced. So you've got to be very careful when you're pulling that out. Now we're going to clean the spring, and to do that we'll use some kerosene. I've got some here in this little container, a small piece of scourer pad with a little bit of kerosene on it. Let it run down through the scouring pad, and then I place the scouring pad over the top of the spring and slowly wind it up the length of the spring, keeping reasonable pressure on the spring so that we clean it with the kerosene and the scourer pad. Once we get up as far as we can go, I turn the scourer pad round and then work down the length of the spring once again. Keeping the pressure on and wiping down the spring. Then using an old bit of cloth, back onto the spring again. This time we're going to wipe up the spring. We want to remove the kerosene and the oil and the dirt that we've removed from it by rubbing up the length of the spring. That's the dirt we've got off it so far. Then reverse the cloth and then once again run down the length of the spring, keeping pressure on it all the way down till we get to the end. And that's the dirt that we've taken off the spring. Now with a clean bit of cloth, we repeat the operation. Double it over on the spring, wind it all the way up to remove any extra kero and dirt that we didn't get off it last time. You can see there's not much left on there. Turn the clean cloth over, start again, and run down the full length of the mainspring, keeping pressure on the cloth as you go. You can see that's come up relatively well now. There's the spring, nice and shiny, clean. Now we're going to grease it. This is the grease we're going to use today. It's what I use for greasing all my mainsprings, not for watches, it's too strong for watches, but for clocks, PT FE grease. Take the lid off and I apply the grease with a toothpick. Now what we're going to do is we're going to run round inside each of these coils, work our way round until we get to the end of the spring, only on one side, because once we wind the spring down and compress it, the grease is going to move from one side of the coil to the other and you'll have a fully oiled spring all the way round. Any excess we put on, once we compress the spring, we'll wipe off before we put it into the barrel. But we don't want to cover both sides of the spring, we only want to cover one. So, get some grease on our toothpick. We'll start off in the center and wind it round. And then continue around each coil, making sure we're getting some grease on it, not too much in a big blot, but at least getting a reasonable cover all the way round. Turn that round a bit. That's got him, lovely. Just slowly, methodically work our way round, putting a layer of grease on the inside of each of these coils. A bit more there. Getting out towards the outside coil now. There we go. Winding it right down to the end. Don't worry if you think you're putting on too much. It will squeeze out once we compress the spring. Now that's what our spring looks like. You can see the grease on it all the way around, and that's sufficient grease to lubricate this spring. Put the toothpick back, wipe some of the grease off my hands. Now the last thing we do is we've got one of these plastic bag with going written on it, because this is the going side train spring. We put the grease spring inside the bag, wrap it up, put it aside for later, so we now know which train that spring relates to, simply because the going and the strike train mainsprings are normally about the same, but because this is a chiming clock, the chiming spring is much bigger and stronger, so we need to know which is which and keep them separate. Right, we're ready to start putting the mainspring back into the barrel. That's our barrel. Come out of the ultrasonic cleaner, it's looking quite clean. This is a strike side mainspring that we cleaned before, and there it is there. But what we're going to do now, we're going to put that back into the barrel manually. So the first thing we do is work out which way the spring is going to fit in. It's going to go in that way. Right, take the winding arbor out, put it aside. So that means what we're going to do now, that lug there, we have to connect that into that piece there. So we'll start off by putting on some leather gloves. Yeah, these mainsprings can be a bit tricky doing them manually. Right, we're ready to start putting the mainspring back into the barrel now. The good idea when you're doing this, if you have a bench vise, is to put the barrel in your bench vise. The rubber inserts here save damaging the barrel, but it's a lot easier when you're doing it by hand. You're trying to hold the barrel and push the spring down in and hold it in at the same time, and it's not easy at all. You can see that I've got the barrel set in to the bench vise. Now with our gloved hands we take the spring, and it takes two hands to press it down and start to get the spring going around inside the other coil that's in there, and holding it tightly so that it doesn't jump out again. Alright, that's started. At the same time I'm holding the barrel into the bench vise, because the barrel's moving down a little bit, but I'm putting my finger underneath that and that'll hold it. We just keep continuing wrapping the spring around and pushing it down into the barrel. Once you get a bit of a start, it's a hell of a lot easier. Whoop, it goes on the inside, don't do that. Got to go in there, that's got it. Started to slip out then, plus the fact it's been greased, so that doesn't make it particularly easy, but we're getting there. We just keep rolling it round, pushing the spring down in behind the last coil. Stop and have a bit of a breather. These things tend to fight pretty hard, so you've got to be on the ball with them. If it slips out of your hand, it'll unwind very, very quickly and you'll be wearing it, and that's something you really don't want to happen. But you can see we're getting there now. The springs, length of the spring is getting smaller and smaller outside the inside the barrel. That's a bit tight, that one. Needs to be pushed in a bit harder. We're getting there slowly but surely. The area we've got to put the spring into is getting pretty damn small at the moment. Whoop! You go away. Stay right where you are. Slide that in there. Right. Whoa. Have a spell for a minute. Hand, fingers and thumbs are getting a bit sore, but we're on the case still. There's very little spring left to put in. It's spinning. No, that's not going to help, I don't think, at the moment. Getting that last coil in under there. And see if I can squeeze that around a bit. Nope, not so. There we go, it's getting that and that. Actually, what I'll do, it might give us a bit of a hand. I'll put the winding arbor in, keeping a tight grip on the spring so it doesn't take off. I think it's a number 8. Yep. I'll start winding that up a bit and pushing it down, which will hopefully let us get the last bit of the coil, though we can't find the other hole in the barrel for the... There we go. What a drama. Push that down. Right, take that off. Press the spring down as much as I can. Poor old bench vise has had a bit of a rough do by the look of it. So, what I'll do now is I'll put that back into the bench vise and we'll push that piece of the spring down there. We'll flatten that down. Get a grip on it, flatten it down and tap it down with a hammer. You can also put a piece of wood across there and tap it down, but you can see we've pushed that in now. I'll take my glove off. Oh, that was a drama. And there we've got it. Adjust our bench vise back to what it's supposed to look like. Now we're going to put the cap on. And how we do that, you put the cap on top of the spring in the barrel, put it into a bench vise and tighten it. Take it out of the vise, hold the piece that you've just had in between the jaws and tighten it again. Undo the vise, spin it round, tighten it again, undo the vise, spin it round. Last time, this should be right now. And holding the barrel and the cap. No, not quite. You can see it's still up a little bit there. Right, we'll put that in. Tighten it down. Ah, I felt it click then. Thank you. A little bit more, just there. Turn that round. And crank the vise down on it. There we have it. The mainspring back in our barrel. After all that drama, it's in there. We're ready to put it back into the movement now.